My biggest critic was my father here in Ireland, mercy on him, and like, he told you the truth. I remember one day we hurled a match and I got man of the match in it, and I scored 7 or 8 points, and all he said to me was, "Just how in the name of God, Martin, did you miss that goal?"
Yeah.
But he was 100% right. I missed a sitter of a goal, and if there had been a point in the game or 2 points in the game, I lost the match on Wexford. He was dead right.
I'm not finished yet. It took me a long time to get here.
Both players have spoken with each other.
So we're going to start at the start here, Brian. Limerick all fired up. Limerick sat down for the team photo, and they were so fired up that they broke away from the team photo and had to go sit back down for the team photo a second time. Everybody hates when that happens, but I've been on teams where you sit back down. I've been on other teams where the photographers are told where to go and you just break away anyways. Then they broke away from the parade very early. They were only halfway up the Cusack side, and Wexford walked around in front of Hill 16 on their own. You know, they definitely seemed a bit jumpy when they were coming out on the field. It were like they were in front of the camera and they couldn't get up the steps, and they were almost pushing each other out. You know, they seemed like they were almost too wound up.
Yeah, they were savagely psyched up, and yet it didn't seem to affect the performance at the start, because they went into a 5 points to 1 lead. So from that perspective, it was a hard one to judge. Like, it's been well flouted now about the Wexford approach to the whole sports psychology. Liam Griffin was way ahead of his time, and there's actually a cut to the scene at the start where Liam Griffin's actually chewing chewing gum, and you've seen the Irish rugby team were employing that tactic over the last couple of years. You've seen Rory Best in particular. You'd always notice him chewing chewing gum coming out into the field, and they actually had that traffic light system where Wexford walked out of the Cusack stand dressing rooms, real calm, going out into the field. They were in red, and then they were out in the field doing the warm up and going around in the parade. They were in amber, and then it was only when the whistle was thrown in that they were at the green stage. So they had gone through all this sort of stuff, whereas Limerick obviously were hyped up to the last, as you said, and almost couldn't be controlled. And I suppose the long-term thing of that was, and look, it proved it in the end, was that they weren't really ready for a battle. They were ready for the initial onslaught, but when Wexford were ready for the 72 minutes that it took.
Yeah, that definitely did seem. It seemed like a strange one, because it had been their second All-Ireland in 3 years. You would have thought they would have been a little bit calmer. I suppose it was the way they lost the last one, all this kind of stuff weighing on Limerick, whereas Wexford didn't have that baggage at all coming into it.
No, and I remember as clear as day, even though I was only 13, I remember seeing an interview with Kieran Carey the week of the All-Ireland, and it was actually went out on Saturday Sport the day before, and I was just struck at the time of, the pressure that was on Limerick, and those Limerick hurlers, and even small things like there was this kind of belief that Limerick deserved an All-Ireland, because of what happened in '94, and that there was that real tension, and you could see that in their body language. Even with 10 minutes to go, they were 4 points down. They weren't expecting any of this, and they were just distraught with the fact that they weren't in front, and they didn't. It's amazing to watch the psychology of games now, and you see some of the classic All-Irelands we're after seeing. Like, say, just to take for example Galway and Limerick 2 years ago. Galway were 8 points down on the 70th minute. Now I know it went to 76 minutes, but they fought back. They nearly got a draw with the game. It's just different, the psychology, where Limerick were ready to give up with about 10 minutes to go and just were throwing in the towel. So it is amazing. But that pressure, as I said, they weren't ready for the battle in the long run. They were ready to hit them early and drive it home. But then when their kind of plan didn't work, it kind of seemed to hit them very hard.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. Come here, Liam Dunne and Gary Kirby. So we've seen this. There's one on YouTube of it slowed right down. My take on it is Liam is fairly low when he connects. Gary Kirby's pulling fairly high, whereas Liam doesn't pull as high as Gary.
Yeah, I think you can look at any of those. Like, how many times did you see players pulling on the ball in the air? Probably loads. Like, I mean, you're talking 20, 30 times in the game. That's the way hurling was. That's the way it was when I started out as well. It's actually moved away from that so much that defenders have got brilliant at kind of holding down the forward, so they don't even get to swing the hurl, and you look like an absolute idiot if you try to swing the hurl in the air nowadays. Or on top of that, if it's deemed anyway wild at all, it'll be a free out. So that kind of skill has gone out of the game completely.
Yeah,
you very, very rarely see people pulling on it.
But they I don't know if it's this final, but I even remember Does anybody ever connect with it when they pull up like that? There's two wild pulls. Do they ever actually even double on it or connect with it? It's not that often.
Oh, yeah, it's not that often the ball's actually connected, but from a half forward, the psychology behind it was trying to break the ball through so that, you had a full forward line coming out in front and try to gather up the ball. And it was turning the half back line towards their own goal if you could break it through.
Yeah.
At least you had some idea. And it stopped, obviously, dominant centre backs or wing backs from actually catching the ball. It was a very simple approach from that perspective. It's the way I was brought up to hurl. I was always coached from the older Offaly players, pull on the ball in the air. There's nothing wrong with pulling. And look, they were right, because in that era, that's exactly what you did. And the amount of strokes that you seen pulled in those situations. And the Leinster final was on telly on TG Catter on Saturday. Yeah, it was. Yeah. And there was some hairy strokes in that too. Martin Storey took a couple of big ones, and Joe Dooley went off with needing stitches. So there was a couple of strokes, and that's just the way it was. It's the way the game was. Did he mean to break his fingers? I don't think he did. It was like that was one huge talking point out of that game, and everyone saying, "Oh, he done him. He meant every bit of it." Like, he went to pull and pull hard. I think they both went to pull and pull hard, and I think it was just unfortunate.
I don't know. One was pulling high and the other was pulling low. The one thing I did see when Kirby was getting treatment. Did you see Liam Dunne walk around and take a peek in to see what damage was done to him?
Of course he did. But Liam Dunne was as cute as a fox, and look, he was physically way smaller than Gary Kirby, and Gary Kirby was he was like Joe Canning of that era. You know what I mean? He was the main man for Limerick. He was their talisman, their free taker, everything. In fairness to him, he hit some free straight after that.
He did.
Right in front of the dugout. But think about even the psychology of that. The first puck out between the two of them, All Ireland, straight down on top of them. Liam Dunne was prepared for that, and he wasn't going to let Gary Kirby just, have his own way. So he was set up, and he was going to pull no matter what.
Was Kirby naive to go pulling there with Liam Dunne when he's the marquee forward and he should be keeping himself out of trouble?
Yeah, see, I suppose there's an element of he was trying to step back and let Liam Dunne know that he was ready there for the battle. Yeah. He was there as well. So I think it's just one of those things. It's unfortunate, Honestly, I think both of them went to pull as hard as they could, and it was just one of those things, honestly. Right.
Okay. The sending off, look, there was a bit of a schmozzle, and Scanlan's temper was up because he had been involved in it, and then the ball was thrown in, and they both pulled once, and it was a wild pull each, but then Scanlan pulled back second time and around the stomach. Even in that era, that probably had to be a red, or was anybody going to complain about that?
Yeah, you see, I think he was unfortunate, because Eamon Scanlan was a lovely ball playing corner forwd, and
he wasn't in the game at all. He hadn't been in the game at all, which probably added to his frustration.
And he was marking Steve McDonough, Mark Steve McDonough in his last game. He was one tough cookie, and he was your old school cornerback. Now, he knew the dark arts, and he'd have been in Eamon Scallan's ear, for those first 32 or 3 minutes he was involved in it. So Eamon Scanlan was almost seen as a kind of too soft, and probably was trying to look after himself in that situation, and just unfortunate for him. I actually happened to be in Croke Park for I'm nearly certain it was the All-Ireland semi-final between Wexford and Tipperary, and actually Pat Horn, that referee, who's the current secretary of the Offaly County Board, he actually met Eamon Scanlan for the first time since that All-Ireland, and they actually got a picture taken together. So it was nice to see that there was no animosity between them.
Yeah.
I suppose Scanlan still got his All-Ireland, but still it was an infamous way for him on that particular day. A huge disappointment for him, but it was unfortunate, because as you said, there was a right bit of a schmozzle beforehand, and tempers were frayed. It's just interesting actually where the ball was thrown in, because that schmozzle was right in front of the goal, and the ball was actually thrown in maybe about 10 metres towards the Hogan stand side. It's not that there was any reason for it or anything, but it's mad that it was thrown in right there. But you would feel sorry for him, Scanlan, in that perspective.
Yeah, you will. Look, and he wasn't feeling sorry for himself. Larry Murphy went off when he was subbed off, and he was pepping him up and congratulating him. So he was obviously still kind of fulfilling that role even though he had been sent off. There was some nice Gaelic football skills from Wexford. Larry Murphy did something.
I knew you'd see this.
Well, first of all, it was George O'Connor kicked it over his shoulder. You wouldn't see a Gaelic footballer doing it. Cush kicked one, and Larry Murphy flicked the ball up that you would do in Gaelic football style with a bloody slitter, and it came up to himself.
It came up lovely to him, in fairness to him.
It's outrageous skill.
The Jerkush one, Jerkush, like, when would you see it nowadays? He won a ball in his own full back line, got as far as 21 and booted it forward. Got it about 40 metres out. Adrian Fenlon caught that ball under serious pressure. He turned around and booted it forward as well. Storey catches it and buys a lovely free off the naive young Mark Foley at that particular stage. And, pulls him into him, falls over. You see that in football as well, actually. Yeah. And falls down the ground, and a free in, nice handy one to Wexford. Massive score at the time. So I said to myself when I was watching that, I said, Wooly's going to love this.
I really did enjoy that. But come here, we're going to have to leave it there, Brian, because Martin Storey, just talking of Martin Storey, he joins us on the line now. How's it going, Martin? I'm not sure what your recall of this game is like. Maybe you watch it every Christmas Day.
Would you believe it if I told you I've seen the match twice or maybe 3 times in its totality ever?
You're joking.
Yeah, the first time I sat down to really look at it was on my own one night here at home, say maybe 3 months afterwards, and I had a couple of bottles of beer looking at it, and I just said, if we'd have lost that match, we hit Corval wides, including myself. That was the conclusion I come to straight away afterwards, that we hit 5 or 6 wides that I hit 2 of them myself. I was just thinking, oh my God, how did you miss them? But normally they're your bread and butter scores, But the other thing that jumped out to me would be our defenders gave away no free, and I think it was 43 minutes or something. Now that is unbelievable.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. Incredible defensive performance in the second half because, you were a man down and against the wind in the second half. You only had a point lead.
Yeah, but Liam Griffin was very good. We rotated who followed their extra man. We took it in turns. I'd follow him for 2 minutes, then Tom Dempsey, then Gary Laffan, then Rory Mack, then Larry Murphy. We rotated that. We didn't get tired that the one man followed him all the time to try and minimise the damage that he was going to do.
Right, that was a smart thing to do because it was Dave Clark they put as the spare man and played him out around the half back line midfield, which should have caused you problems, but it didn't.
Yeah, well, one of us always tried to pick up and do the run with him, chase him when he was trying to attack, or set up an attack. So we didn't. It's not like now, that you had 2 or 3 running at the one time. That time there wasn't. It was very, very, very seldom that a wing back or a midfield or even a centre back would actually attack. You know what I mean? Their first job was to defend. Yeah. And even though he attacked, he didn't ultra attack. He nearly defensively attacked it, you know what I mean? Yeah,
no, it definitely was. He didn't have any impact on it. It didn't look like they had any impact, but I didn't realise that from watching it back that you were all taking turns from marking him. Come here, you went up for the toss with Kieran Carey. You didn't even look at each other in the face. Do you remember that? I suppose you were both captains and you knew you'd be marking each other.
Yeah, we were very good. We were friends. We were two of the fellas that had never won anything for the length that we were playing. He was playing a long, long time, and I was playing 10 or 12 years, and none of us had anything to show for it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And if we're ever at an all-star do or any of those, the consistency award dues or anything like that, both of us would have got a few of them, and we would have always got in together and drank together because 2 of us were very similar in the sense of that we had won nothing, and we knew at the end of it, but one of us was going to be an All-Ireland winning captain, the other wasn't, So it was an awkward sort of a moment for the 2 of us that had been friendly, Right, because I thought it was interesting. There was no smiles for each other. You didn't even look at each other in the eye at all. You just keep both of you put your heads down. Probably nerves because of knowing each other. Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose too, Liam Griffin had his very, very set psychologically for everything. I remember looking up and he was standing with the referee, and I went off and I got a drink of water and I said I'll leave him up there for another few seconds just to think, Right. But look at them. You try and play every ball that you can to your own advantage. Every little leg up that you can get in any way, shape or form. Sure, if you think it helps, it helps. Whether it does or it doesn't matter. If you think it does help.
Yeah, no, exactly. Come here, you had a problem with your studs. Did you have to screw them out and put other ones in, or was it just a matter of changing your boots? Back in '96, I suppose. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was wearing the screw and I lost 2 studs.
Oh, you lost studs?
And Liam Griffin ran in and gave me 2 replacements. So I was down the ground putting in new studs, and we were only tightening them with my hand because we didn't have anything to tighten them. You know? But it was unusual because they were the same boots I had worn. It was unusual that the studs come loose because they were the same boots I had worn, but I had put in a new set of sort of summer type studs rather than the real long ones, you know. Because
right.
in the winter I used to wear the rugby inch studs, like that'll give you the real, the metal ones. In the winter I used to wear those, and then in the summer you wore the. Croke Park was always kept watered. You wore the multi studs in every other pitch in Ireland, but Croke Park was always kept nice and soft and watered. That there was always a good bit. Yeah, well, you'd slip a bit if you were wearing the multi. So I always wore the screw ins for it, and then there was 2 of them come out, and I still have the set of boots here at home. They're in an old bag somewhere, and I looked there. I was showing them to someone, and there's all these there's 3 odd studs in it, like, you know.
Right. Just to explain to some of the younger people listening to this show, Martin, they mightn't be as old as me and you. Back in the mid-90s, you used to, instead of wearing the multi-screw, you could actually take out the longer screws and buy shorter ones and put them in. They were a shorter stud for the summer, but they were still a screw-in stud, right?
They were still a screw, but they were bigger and rounder.
Yeah.
They maybe would have been less than half an inch long, but it could have been an inch in diameter, or an inch and a quarter in diameter. So you had more surface on the ground enough for your feet to get sore, like, you know.
Yeah, no, that was it. Come here, talk to me about the match, because you stormed into the game in the 22nd minute. That's when you really took the game by the scruff of the neck. But before that, you were, I don't know, were you kind of outside the game a little bit? I know Kieran Carey's...
I was getting a lesson off Kieran Carey. He was after scoring a pint. He was absolutely. And I remember when Liam Griffin ran into me one time when I wanted the studs, and I just said, "Geez, Liam, I'm going to have to do something soon. I'm getting the stride here." And he says, "No, you're grand. Just keep doing what you're doing. It'll come."
Right.
And that's exactly it. There was I think it was Adrian Fenlon pulled on a ground ball, and I think I picked it up and I turned and I got a pint off it, and that settled everything for you. You know what I mean? That settled you. Then I got a free after it, and all of a sudden you were totally in the game. But going back to the original question, Kieran Carey was as good as man that's ever hurled in Ireland. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, right, he hasn't won his All Ireland, but my God, was there many better players out there over the decades? Was there? Because I watched him playing a club All Ireland final, and he's 17 years of age, and he scored 3 points from wing forward or 4 points from wing forward, and he was still, I think, doing his leaving cert on it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Kieran Carey was one of the best that took a hurl in his hand, like, you know.
But I reckon
if I could break even with Kieran Carey, I'd be doing fairly well, let alone trying to get the better of him, you know.
They weren't shy about dropping puck-outs down on top of yourself and him, were they? If he was a strength of theirs, you were clearly, you know, an equal strength for Wexford, because Fitzhenry was dropping him right down on top of you and him.
Yeah, well, I love the high ball.
Yeah.
I love trying to catch a high ball. I always put it down as maybe a strength of my game, and I never mind who pulled behind me or who was at and behind me. I mean, you were totally focused on the ball, and it was something that I was fairly good at. So I always wanted to poke out. I actually preferred the ball coming down and out of the sky rather than on the ground coming to me. I don't know why, it was just a habit. And usually lads will pull, and when they're pulling, they're not concentrating on the ball, they're actually concentrating on you, so it gives you a better chance of catching the ball, like, you know.
Right, because
it's
funny.
Kieran Carey never stood back and pulled his living best, or we say, you know what I mean, lads will try and flick it away. Brian Whelan didn't stand back and pull his living best, you know. I mean, I was hoping that lads would stand back and pull their living best. Gives you a better chance of catching, because the pull will usually hit your hurl, like, you know.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because you caught one great ball before half time, and it was one ball that clearly Carey was actually trying to pull on, and you caught it clean and won a free off it.
Yeah, but it's easier to catch the ball when someone is pulling rather than contesting it with you. So, well, that's my theory on it anyway. Like, I mean, and I'd love when a fella is up in your back and he's darting you in the kidneys and he's giving you a push and he's maybe walking on the backs of your legs and stuff, because he's concentrating on you. And if he's concentrating on you, you can totally concentrate on the ball, but he can't. So it gives you the advantage for the ball, you know.
Yeah, Scanlan gave you a lovely little ball, like almost a no-look ball. Then for your second point, it was ground hurling at its very best.
Yeah, brilliant. He just pulled straight across it, and it come across to me lovely, and I got the score. And that gives you a bit of belief, Colin, in yourself. Like you know, I was 32 years of age, and I'd hurled it was my 12th season, and first time ever in Croke Park in September. Like, you know what I mean? George O'Connor was 37. It was his first time in Croke Park in September. Like, we were as nervous as anybody could ever be going in, and we hadn't a young team either. We were a team that, I suppose, if you averaged out our age, we were probably up in the 27th or 8th. Like, you know, with a few young lads, all right, but the rest of us were seasoned campaigners for a good while, like, you know.
Yeah, no, but Limerick, in fairness, from watching the match, Limerick looked a little bit nervous. Like, they broke away from the parade before. It was the shortest parade I've ever seen from a team. They were gone after halfway up along the Cusack stand, and you stayed going because your fans were under Hill 16. And, like, I suppose as captain, the temptation would be to break away maybe because they broke away.
Yeah, but it wasn't, because I wanted to march in front of our own fans on Hill 16, because that's where we were going to get our biggest roar. They got their biggest roar at the other end, like, you know what I mean? So I knew that were our biggest roar. Plus I felt that united us more, that they were on their own. They were going to have 2 more minutes to think and worry and what will happen and what's going to happen, whereas we were still in the file walking, talking to each other and having each other's back, still talking, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I think it just helped us to focus more. But I suppose we were going in really, really thrilled to have gotten to an All-Ireland final, because Wexford hadn't been in one from 1977. Limerick they say themselves that they threw away one in 95 or 94,
yeah.
that, but 94, but that had absolutely nothing to do with us. Like, I mean, they were going up to sort of put the Demons right for 94, but so we'd nothing to do with the Demons from 94. We were going up to win for 96 for Wexford, like, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. What did you make of Scanlan sending off? Like, I mean, back then, it was ref slightly differently, but I suppose he swung once and then swung twice, and the second one was high enough.
It was, but so was the other pull, only it got caught up, like, you know what I mean? I mean, both lads pulled high, and I just felt that it was a harsh sending off under the circumstances on a hot ball. I just felt it was harsh. But there had been a few hits started to go in for a few minutes earlier, and
yeah.
I'd say he was just taking control. And when you throw a red card, it just puts everybody back in their box, and all of a sudden everybody's temper drops back down, and you totally go back to concentrating on the ball rather than getting fired up and getting caught up in other stuff, like, you know.
Yeah, a lot of talk is of the Liam Dunne Gary Kirby clash it must have been only in the first minute or two. What's your reading of that, or what would Liam say in private to that?
Well, my reading of it is, and I watched it in slow motion a good few times. If you look for the direction that Gary Kirby's hurl was coming, it was coming dead straight across. If Liam Dunne hadn't pulled the opposite way, Liam Dunne had lost his head as well. So I mean, I think all's fair in love and war. I mean, they're dropping ball. 2 lads pulled their living best. Gary Kirby was complaining. He went out to the sideline a few minutes later. He took a free on the sideline, 73 or 4 yards out. He put it dead straight over the black spot. So it mustn't have been affecting him that much.
No.
And I think he scored 2 of them frees after, did he?
He did. He didn't miss a free. I think he got 2 frees in the game. That one that you're talking about, that was a very long one. All right, straight after it. Yeah.
So if it was that bad, I don't think it affected him. You know what I mean? I just think I think there was more made out of it afterwards than there was actually during the match. And I don't think Gary made that nervous. He held on for the match, like, you know what I mean? So it didn't stop him putting in his effort, like, you know.
No, exactly.
But, like, I mean, like, Liam Dunne got a reputation that I think was very unwarranted. He was a tough little man, but he was also pound for pound probably the best little hurler in the country.
Yeah, but you can be both. You can be both. He stopped
some of the biggest men in the country. But that time, I was getting the same shots at the other end of the field, and there wasn't as much about it, like, you know.
Yeah. I thought you used all your experience in the second half to win a lovely free where you pulled Mark Foley down with you, and it looked like he pulled you down.
That's called manufacturing the free. That's a phrase.
Oh, it definitely is.
was getting tired. I was starting to get tired at that stage. So you had to just try and something. No, it just set itself right that he come to me awkwardly, and I sort of took advantage of it and made it look like he pulled me down, even though I had the grip on him, you know.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciated that.
But that comes with experience as well, though. You know that. I mean, an older player is able to get a free a lot easier than a younger player, because he knows the angles to run, and he knows when to fall at the right time and all that stuff. Like, you know what I mean? That's sort of, I think, comes with a bit of experience and stuff too. Like, you know, you have to get cuter as you get older, because the legs go a bit, but the mind gets sharper, you know.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So you made reference in your speech after the game to being called us. We've been described as the bridesmaids of hurling. Well, today we got married, which was a good line in your speech. Were you hurt by some of that? Because you were talked about being bridesmaids and being yellow bellies as well.
Yeah, I certainly was hurt over it. I mean,
who wrote that, Martin? Or was there a journalist, or who wrote, or where did you read?
I can't remember, but we were called that we would never ever cross the line, because we didn't have the balls for what it took and all that. Like that, we always sort of blew up when the pressure come on and all. And I honestly never felt we did. I just felt that, like, if you go through the 90s. We got beaten in the league final in 90 and 91. 93, we went to 3 league finals against Cork. I mean, the teams that beat us in most of the championships along the 90s went on and won All-Irelands. Cork, or Kilkenny beat us in 92 and 93. They won the All-Irelands. Offaly beat us twice. I think they won the All-Irelands. We won one. Like, I mean, that's 5 or 6 of the teams to win All-Irelands. Like, so there was no backdoor system, like, at the time. So
yeah.
If you didn't win, it was knockout.
Yeah, and it's a long year to come back then again, I suppose, and rectify it.
Well, it's a long year training from October, and you go out in the first round maybe in June. You meet Kilkenny, and Kilkenny go on and win the All-Ireland. And you were after training October, November, December, January, February, March, April and May, and half of June. You play one match and you're finished.
Jeez,
at least now. The lads get a fair crack at the whip. Like, if you do have one bad day, you can recover it, like, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's mad to read that Liam Griffin was getting hate mail the year before. Was Offaly had beaten you in 95 by 7. That's a brilliant Offaly team as well, and he was getting hate mail.
Yeah, but Meath beat us in the league as well in Belfield and in Scarty the same year.
Oh, right, it was after that game he got that.
Well, he did, and he got spit on as well.
Jesus.
But see, I mean, look at like, the way I look at that is like, supporters are all brilliant. Don't get me wrong; they're absolutely brilliant. But you could have a fella that he could have £500 on you to win. You know what I mean? And he could be his Wexford, and Idas could be. So if he could get near you, he would call you every name under the sun. Like, and I suppose he thinks he's entitled to, like, you know. I don't really get caught up. I mean, I've got spit on after matches, and I've been called everything under the sun. I've got a clatter and everything. But look, I always felt that was part and parcel of the game. That's the way it was at the time, and I wouldn't have changed anything about it, because it made you realise how important it was to other people as well. Like, you know.
Yeah. No, I look
not just you. You were the lucky one that was out there. But you were carrying the hopes of these people that would be prepared nearly to hit you because they were so annoyed that you got bet, like, you know.
Yeah,
that's what it meant to them as well. And I don't look at that as a bad thing. I think that makes it more. It puts more pressure on you to perform better, like, you know, and to live up to what their expectations and what your own expectations are, you know.
Yeah, instead of ever giving out about that, I if you lost a bad game that you should have won, or you didn't play well, and I got abuse off supporters, I would think I deserved it. Like, I wouldn't really give out about it.
That's what I'm saying. That's my thing. Like, that sure, if you play bad, you're entitled to be abused.
I think so. In a small way, you would feel weird if you weren't given out to if you didn't play well. It would be in another way.
I mean, my biggest critic was my father here in Ireland, mercy on him, and like, he told you the truth. I remember one day we hurled a match, and I got man of the match in it, and I scored 7 or 8 points, and all he said to me was, "Just how in the name of God, Martin, did you miss that goal?"
Yeah.
But he was 100% right. I missed a sitter of a goal, and if there had been a point in the game, or 2 points in the game, I lost the match on Wexford. He was dead right. Do you know what I mean? But you can blow over them things if some fella blows smoke up your arse for long enough. You can, you know what I mean? You forget about what you should have done and what you actually did, you know. And he was right, like, and that always sort of grounded me. That my father always grounded me in that sense when he was playing, because he was harsh on it in that sense. So he kept you to try to be better.
Yeah, I completely agree. That would be my way of doing things, if I'm being honest. Come here, just to finish up, I was also reading that there was a survey in 1995, and it came out in the survey that Eric Cantona was the #1 sporting hero amongst the youth in Wexford. I presume that all changed if there was a similar survey after 96.
Yeah, it was probably David Beckham, wasn't it? No. But so you would have had funny things. I got into Marty Morrissey interviewed me one day in Kilkenny after we're after hurling in Dublin or Laois in the championship, and I had my young fella in my arms, Anthony, and he was about 3 at the time. And Marty turns around to him and he goes, "And now, Anthony, who's the best hurler in Wexford?" And Anthony looked at him and he goes, "Liam Dunne is." So, look, honesty comes straight.
I think it's in the Storey family, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's. Look, it's. I mean, I always didn't need anybody to tell me after a match how I played column. I knew, and if you wanted to talk to Rosie in some stage, I often felt like not getting out of bed of a Monday morning, like, because I knew I didn't do well enough the day before.
Yeah.
And that's how much it hurt, like. But that's what kept me going to go back the next year to want to try harder, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Martin, come here. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Pleasure.
All right, so Wexford 113, Limerick 14. Probably not an all-time classic, Brian, this final, but obviously it was the sending off had a bearing on the second half, where Wexford just kind of had to shut the game down completely.
Yeah, defensive masterclass from their perspective. You know, they only conceded 4 points in that second half. Now, they only scored 5 themselves, but, you know, as you said, they shut them down. Limerick just, you know, did the right thing in moving Dave Clark to the sweeper, but he just wasn't effective, and Wexford kind of found their way around it. Didn't get a huge amount of ball inside after maybe the initial first five minutes of that second half. But,
no, but it was interesting, Martin Storey saying there that they decided at half time that they all took turns following Dave Clark. So Dave Clark couldn't influence the game. 1 minute Martin Storey followed him. I didn't really notice this on the actual video on YouTube, but they all took turns marking him, because that was a big feature of the second half. Limerick not using that spare man, or that spare man not being able to influence the game. Yeah,
it was massive, and I thought, like, even though Kieran Carey scored 3 points, like, and he at the first 20 minutes he was excellent. You know, he got up, got a score near the end as well. They really could have moved him forward to midfield or even to the half forward line. Yeah. You know, Gary Kirby wasn't hurling well at centre forward.
They did that. I think he ended up there, didn't he?
I think he went up under like a couple of line balls, and maybe he was moved to midfield, because, as you said, it's hard to tell on telly. But, you know, they could have put him up into that half forward line, because they needed a little bit more impetuous up there. Like, Limerick fell into the old trap. They lifted both corner forwards. You know, it was just laughing when I saw it. And then they lifted Barry Foley. You know, 4 points he got in the first half. He roasted Rod Guiney. He got 3 points off him. Then he got another point off Larry O on the other wing. So Barry Foley had a brilliant first half. Now, he did fade out.
He did go out of it, yeah.
But there was no other forward doing it. So, you know, and the disappointing thing probably from Limerick's perspective was the Damien Quigley full forward. They thought he was going to, you know, be a contrast in style and jerk hush, but they lorded high ball down top of him. Like, Damien Quigley got 2-3 in All-Ireland against Offaly 2 years previous. He was Limerick's man of the match. He was unmarkable that day. So, you know, Limerick really didn't get enough out of him. And it just shows how probably unsettled Limerick were. Like, they were, you know, listening to the commentary, they were ready to lift Owen O'Neill after 20 minutes until he got a point. So, you know, it's gas how quickly they were ready to move certain players. You know, Barry Foley probably was because he was one of the younger starters. That's why he got lifted in the second half, as opposed to maybe Frankie Carroll or moving Gary Kirby. So they were quick to whip lads off as opposed to moving people around. Yeah,
Frankie Carroll, just an example of the Wexford defending, was an example in the second half. Frankie Carroll caught a great ball from a puck out. He was a target for a lot of their puck outs, and he caught it. and George O'Connor was marking, or no, Guiney was marking him. Guiney had gone across, so Guiney was on him, hassling him. George O'Connor went over, doubled up on him. Colm Keogh left his man in a corner back and came up and they tribbled him. And then when Keogh had realised they haven't bottled up, he backed off and he backed off again, then back onto his man. You know what I mean? They were swarming onto the man with the ball.
Yeah, and Keogh in particular, he was excellent. In his last 20 minutes, he was unbelievable. He came out with a mountain of ball. I thought he was brilliant. I actually marked him towards the end of his career. He was an absolute gentleman as well. He was a real ball-playing cornerback.
Right.
You know, so
Keogh got the old flimsy bandage around the knee in the first half to make him play on, didn't he?
To make him play. There was more tape on that. It was going on for ages. I don't know how he ran with that all on him.
Yeah, that's only a little bit of cotton. Sure, there's no more support in those things, anyways. But I remember back in the day, those pull-up things you'd put onto your knee. Sure, not one bit of help they could absolutely give you. But Limerick, it was interesting enough. Kerry won the toss and he decided to go against the wind. And then Limerick obviously conceded the first one. It was a brilliant Larry Murphy point and great bit of skill where he led on to shoot and continued on. And then Limerick took over against the wind, 5-1, and they were in control. Total
control. And, you know, that's what we were talking about, the psychology earlier. Like, it looked like Limerick were so pumped up, but it was actually, it was working, and Wexford seemed to be really rattled. The kind of Larry got a big point to kind of settle Wexford, and then John O'Connor, after having that off the ball incident, and O'Neill stood up and launched a long range free. So before you know it, they were back in the game, and I suppose that's what gave them belief. Actually, speaking of the wind, did you notice how far the puck outs were going from Fitzhenry in particular? Like, they were launched down top of the D, inside the D. There's a big debate about the slitters at the moment, and how light they are, but players were able to do it back then as well. I just think players are now more consistent at doing it. I think every player nowadays can hit the ball and drive it as far as, whereas there was a lot more kind of poor striking back then, and obviously a huge amount of ground hurling as well.
The poor striking, but the hurls were very, very thin, weren't they? I looked at Laffan, Gary Laffan. We'll talk about him in performance of the weekend, because he was brilliant and terrible all in the same game. And he had some terrible wides, and he didn't look like he was a good striker. And then I looked at his hurl at one stage, and it was like Brendan Maher's hurl when he lost half of it down in the Gaelic grounds, wasn't it?
Now you know what I was saying. Hurls were obviously, and I think it was something that struck me straight away. You could see how long hurls were. Everyone was using, I'd say, minimum 35 up to about 37, because it was, as we said, there's a lot more ground hurling, a lot more doubling in the air, so that was the need for the long hurler. Right. And then just the boss was way smaller. Like, the boss has only started to get large maybe since around 2010, so.
And why is that?
It's only kind of this decade. It's just become kind of I won't say cool, but it's kind of the done thing now.
It's made it easier though, right, to get a good strike?
It's definitely made it easier, and see, that's why you have more consistent striking nowadays as well, because the boss is actually bigger. So it's not rocket science. It's like golf, isn't it? Like, we've better tools in our hands.
But that's it. There has to be something with ground hurling here. The smaller boss would help you whip it along the ground, and now there's no ground hurling, so they can have a bigger boss. Is there anything in that?
Yeah, exactly, and a thinner heel on the hurl as well. That was a big thing for ground hurling. You could whip the ball along the ground, and obviously a longer lever in terms of your hurl. You even seen players that didn't bend their back as much. They were coming out the ball. Sometimes it took them 3 or 4 times to rise the ball because they had such a long hurl out in front of them. But they never seemed they weren't under pressure. They didn't, they weren't panicking, because they were used to obviously hurling with that kind of length of the hurl. Whereas now obviously hurls are so much shorter. It's all strike into the hand, and it's just sheer contrast to what was going on. But when I grew up, and for a good maybe 10 years of my career with Offaly, we practiced ground hurling every single night, and that's what every county would have been doing in the 90s as well. Drills upon drills of ground hurling, and doubling on the ball and whipping on it, and so it's totally different training.
Totally different. If you were to look back and try to analyse this game based on what the game is like now, you'd be like, they were giving the ball away, but it's all relative. You look back on any sport 20 years before, and a world record 20 years before, a world record now is way slower, so it's the same in anything. The ground hurling was in there, and some of the ground hurling worked. I was talking to Martin Storey, Scanlan gave him a lovely ball along the ground, an early ball.
100% right with that one, because actually that struck me when I watched it. I was like, how many times would Scanlan have rose that ball maybe ran with it, could have ran into trouble, but he just whipped on it first time. Storey gathered it, took on Kieran Carey, popped, got around him and popped it over the bar. It was a beautiful score and a lovely little dink of a ball across from Scanlan.
Yeah,
100% right.
And the thing is, like most battles were man on one, it was hip to hip, and there were long clearances, and you had to win your own ball. You had to win it, and you had to put it over the bar. There was no huge pattern to the play. It was getting it down there, and the ground hurling was just a faster way of getting it down there. And the way it was you have to be good enough. If I get it down there, to get it up in your hurl and put it over the bar, that's just the way it is. You had to win your own battles.
Well, you see, the thing about ground hurling was number one, it moved the ball faster, and number two, like it was actually a forwards ball because it was low, it was bouncing,
right.
And if you could read it, and like obviously a lot of practice in this, a midfielder or a half forward doubling on a ball, keeping it moving. If you can read that and get out in front, it was actually a great ball to get. So that's why it was so conducive at the time, and look, Offaly were renowned for it in the 80s in particular. They brought it to a new level, but it just became kind of a staple part of the diet. It wasn't really till maybe, Cork and Kilkenny then that tried to counteract that kind of ground hurling style and brought in, well, obviously Kilkenny brought in power, but Cork brought in the running game.
Right, okay. So here's Limerick were in control of this game. Kieran Carey was lording it over Martin Storey. Carey scored an inspirational point in the 21st minute. Fitzhenry with a clearance that went to Carey. It wasn't Martin Storey's ball anyway. Carey won it, scored a point. Limerick's tails were kind of off. He's winning that battle. Then on the 22nd minute, Martin Storey, after not being in the game at all, decided, I better get into this game, and he scored a very good point in the 22nd minute. He caught a great puck out then on the top of the D, where Carey tried to pull on it, and then the Scanlan lovely ball. So now Martin Storey finishes the half. Wexford got the goal as well. Tom Dempsey, brilliant goal. Tom Dempsey got a goal and a point.
Brilliant point, by the way, because Scanlan was after being sent off, and then it was the next score was going to be huge, and it put them back in front just for half time. And he hit Steve McDonough a lovely dunt as McDonough was going to raise it. Did you see the stroke McDonough went to pull? If he connected, he'd have got straight. He would have been sent off straight away.
No, I thought Tom Dempsey picked his pocket, did he?
Yeah, but like Dempsey picked his pocket and was gone like maybe 3-4 meters away from him, popped it over the bar. But McDonough was disgusted when he took the hit and just swiped out with one hand. And if he'd have hit him, he was a certain sending off.
Right. Did you know Tom Dempsey's got 1-1 in the first half? Both came off high balls to Larry Murphy on the edge of the square. So I think that must have been a tactic of Wexford's for Laffan maybe to be drifting around, and then Larry Murphy had a big height advantage over Clark. And for him maybe to start drifting in, or he just maybe happened to be in there. But definitely the 1-1 Dempsey scored was off high balls onto the edge of the square to Larry Murphy.
Yeah, that's interesting to know, actually. I'd say it was just as much the half forward, drifting in, because like a lot of time back then, like half forwards probably used the 45-yard line as their actual line to guide themselves off, whereas nowadays it's probably more off the 65, where you're filtering out the field and working deep. So they wouldn't have had as much maybe distance to travel in from that perspective. So, but yeah, Larry was obviously very strong there. He had an unbelievable Leinster final. He got 4 or 5 points against Offaly that day. So he was very, very dangerous. He had a quiet day overall for him. But he got him off to a great start, as you said.
Yeah, I'm after losing my train of thought here. 1 second now. Just remember that edit there, Paul.
Yeah, cool.
The ball was in play an awful lot, wasn't it, Brian? There was an awful lot of action. Now there was a lot of clearance. Maybe the goalkeeper was able to puck it out fairly long, but most of the players outfield, probably because of the hurls, weren't able to drive at fierce, huge distances. So you saw lots of passages of play.
Yeah, the ball certainly seemed to be in play an awful lot more, as you said, and it was kind of like, because I suppose it was the nature of the hurling, as you said, hip to hip and keeping the ball moving, so it wasn't as stop-start, and obviously scoring rates were way lower back then compared to nowadays. On average, there were games where obviously it crept up, but generally the scoring rates were much lower, and as we said, only 5 points and 4 points scored from each team in the second half. That tells you how tight kind of a game it was. it was I thought it was really exciting to watch it back. Like, obviously I remember watching it live, but I thought it was still entertaining hurling. And I just, for me, I was just struck with the psychology of it all. And I know I've gone over this point already, but how with 10 minutes to go, it just seemed like Limerick were ready to throw in the towel and not realising how much hurling could actually be done.
Yeah, and I suppose, what was it? They got 4 points in the second half, and there was 2 of them in the last
couple of minutes, and both of them by half backs actually.
Yeah, and why couldn't they have staged that kind of a comeback, like you're saying, with 10 minutes to go? It just was a bizarre kind of. Did they throw in the towel? Did they run out of ideas? Did they? I don't. It's hard to describe it. Did they bottle? They seemed to bottle it.
Yeah, but see, every wide they had just seemed to suck the life out of them, and you could hear the crowd then as well. Just getting
Wexford had a few wides too. Storey had 2 bad ones. Scanlan had one.
Again, it comes back to the whole psychology of the All Ireland in general. Wexford weren't the favourites. Limerick were the favourites. It just seemed that the pressure was on Limerick, whereas Wexford were coming up and every score was going to be huge. So if they had a wide, if they were even delighted to be having a shot almost, was kind of the kind of psychology behind it all. They were keeping it up that end of the field. They were forcing it. If they were getting a chance, that meant, look, we're getting chances. Whereas Limerick, it was the whole pressure of, oh no, another wide. And, the couple of subs, had those wides. Actually, massive talking point, and I knew you were probably coming to this, the goal, or the disallowed goal. Like, for me, there was no reason why that should have been disallowed, and that was a big moment.
Oh no, there was no, to be fair, there was no need, there was no way it should have been disallowed, but Wexford did stop playing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It might not have been a goal if the referee didn't blow his whistle, because the referee or the Wexford backs just stopped. Yeah,
the Wexford back stopped. Now, Colin Keogh still just tried to stop it on the line and went in through his legs. But I agree with what you're saying. They did stop, but there was no free.
No, there was no free there at all. There was absolutely no free. No, that was a weird one for him to call, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's an old. Well, I can't call it old school. You still see it a lot in club where referees calling the square ball and they're out around the 65.
Yeah, that's probably the way it goes. So, the best team won. There's no doubt about that. In a strange way, at half time, you're thinking, if you're watching that live, you're thinking, geez, Limerick are put themselves in a brilliant position here. They're a man up, and they have the wind, and they're the favourites. And it's just a completely limp performance that they were just scared out of it, and Wexford looked like the team that had the extra man. It was bizarre.
Yeah, and as I said, look, to me, they were quick to take off players. They probably had a really strong panel and a lot of guys probably pushing. Sometimes you can see that can be to a team's detriment. So, a lot of them were still household names, guys that were coming on, and they needed to probably move players around and get some of their bigger players, try and get them more influenced in the game. The likes of Gary Kirby, maybe moving Kieran Carey out of that half back line, especially because they had an extra player back there. Frankie Carroll was going toe to toe, but not on the scoring sheet. And Mike Houlihan was a bit of a wrecking ball in midfield. He was hitting everything that moved, but again, he could have been maybe if it was moving Carey to midfield and him to centre forward or whatever. So to me, they needed to get more out of their big name players.
Yeah, I think Carey did move to midfield. I think they said that in the commentary, that he moved to midfield at one stage.
Yeah.
In the second half. But here's the thing on Dave Clark, right? He's the spare man, and to be honest with you, they were saying it was Liam Lenihan, it was one of the Limerick selectors, said we have a man loose, so where we play him, we'll talk about that at half time. So he was interviewed just before he went in for the half time break. So I thought coming out at half time, Dave Clark was a good aggressive player. He was playing from half back line up to midfield, and he was actually going to give Wexford something to think about. The conservative thing there is to use Dave Clark just to cover Tom Dempsey and Gary Laffan inside, right? So that's grand. The problem with having Dave Clark out around the half-back line midfield is because of the style of hurling back then. If this was now, lads would be picking out Dave Clark with a short stick pass all over the place, and he'd be causing mayhem. Because the way hurling was back then, where you were getting it down the field or you're whipping on it, and Dave Clark's not getting in the game at all. He's the spare man, but the game is bypassing him completely.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. And Dave Clark was a brilliant wing back, when he played wing back, and he was brilliant at hoovering up ball and then driving forward with it as well. And kind of to have him not having any influence on the game was also a huge blow to Limerick. I get why they put him there. You know, Steve McDonough, for the finishing out the 2 or 3 minutes of the first half, he was in the sweeper. So they kind of said, right, look, Steve McDonough is more a man marker. We need him marking someone, and we'll put a ball player like Dave Clark as the sweeper. So I could see why they thought about it. But, you know, it's just the way it turned out. I suppose it's hindsight. You're obviously an awful lot more intelligent about it afterwards, but it's something that they probably should have tried to change after 15 or 20 minutes and try and get Dave Clark into the game. And you know, at that rate, if it was Steve McDonough or whoever that sat into the pocket, it didn't really seem to matter as much. Or as you said, maybe look at moving him up to midfield. And in fairness to Gerard Canning, he even did call it at one stage, you know, could even think about putting him up as an extra forward. So, you know, you could see that it was very obvious that Dave Clark wasn't working in that sweeper role. It's just unfortunate that Limerick didn't seem to do anything about it.
No, and the point that Dave Clark got was from a sideline, that he was going to give it up the line, and then he realised, oh, here, Dave Clark's free, gives it to him, and he sticks it over the bar. And it was like, oh, it's Jesus, he's been there all the whole second half. If you could have done this with him, or else like the obvious change would have been potentially to let Kieran Carey be the spare man, and he's such a free spirit. They'd definitely give the ball to him.
Yeah, and he could have been, as you said, a free spirit. He could have been driving up the field himself, you know, without even being told. He probably wouldn't have had the discipline to sit there and sit in the pocket. You know, like, to think about it, like, he might have got one of those points in midfield, but to get, you know, 3 points from starting at centre back with some going from Kieran Carey and Mark and Martin Storey as well, that was some battling performance. And he missed an easy one in the second half as well. You know, he done great. He soloed up the field 40 metres out, and you'd expect him to slot it, and just went to the right and wide. So it was some performance at the same time from Kieran Carey.
It was, and to be fair, like, Martin Storey played a captain's part the second half of the first half. Carey, it's funny, they both marked each other and they both played well. You know what I mean? It's a funny one, and they're both both captains. But that was it. The best team won. And the weird thing from a Wexford point of view is that they were called the bridesmaids and yellow bellies and all these things. And then they win a game that is completely in contrast to any kind of, you know, digs or insults like that. Yeah,
they dug it out. I tell you, well, they had a tough spine in that team. Like, the lad's not afraid to pull timber. You know, like, you're talking Ger Cush, you know, tough out fullback, old school, raw out fullback. You know, John O'Connor definitely was not afraid to use timber and funded the dark arts. Their half back line was really tough. And to think as well, like, Sean Flood wasn't playing that All-Ireland as well. He was a massive blow, and that was another part of the psychology too. You know, George O'Connor started in that final because you know, George was at the end of his career. He was a brilliant stalwart for Wexford for years, and he was one of the bridesmaids at Hurling. Yeah, it was a great story that he actually got to start in that All-Ireland and finish it out. But, you know, Sean Flood was a big loss to Wexford there at half-back. But, you know, in its own sense then, though, Larry O went back, wing back, and had a great game, got a couple of points, drove forward with a lot of balls. So he's a great old character, Larry O. He's still talking about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Right, we'll leave it there, Brian, and we'll come back with performance of the weekend. Okay, so performance of the weekend. You just touched on Larry O'Gorman just before we finished the last section there, Brian, and he was outstanding. I have him down here. I was holding off because he scored 2 good points. One at an important point of the first half, and he tried to G up the crowd and get them going. And then another really long one in the second half, and again G'd up the crowd. That's just Larry. I'd say he just enjoys that kind of thing. But one thing I did notice about Larry O'Gorman, and especially in the second half, is that his distribution was on a much higher level than a lot of players on the field.
Yeah, definitely. He'd be very comfortable in today's game as well. You know, as you said, he gave great ball in, and he was well able to strike from distance and still give a good ball in. You know, there was a great trajectory on it. It was either, you know, low trajectory, as you said before, or it was bouncing in front of players. And yeah, he was excellent. But he was always able to play well in big games. He just revelled in it. You know, it's the type of character who is, you know, you've met him yourself. You've seen what he's like. He'd live for those sort of days. And, you know, when he got that crowd behind him, it really did give belief to the Wexford crowd and the players around him, because he didn't give a hoot if it was All-Ireland or not. He was just there to perform, and that was it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, I mean, he'd have a great bit of pace about him as well. He was able to eat up ground up through the middle. Like, he almost played midfield, really, didn't he? Like, he was playing wing back. I know he moved across onto young Barry Foley, but he's the kind of half back where he turns the table on you and you were following him kind of thing.
And that's exactly it. He was driving up the field, killing you from a half forward. Barry Foley was after sniping Rod Guiney for 3. Now, he got one straight away off Larry O, but
he did.
It was probably clever Hurling getting it, but Larry gave him something different to think about altogether, and obviously was able to impose his physical strength on him in the air then as well, as it got into more of a battle. So Larry, he nullified that Barry Foley threat, because Barry Foley was the main scoring threat to Limerick, and he was eventually taken off.
Yeah, Ger Cush is the second one down on my list here. He was brilliant. Now I think Limerick played into his hands, because I'd say Ger Cush wouldn't fancy a different type of ball going into Damien Quigley, but the type of ball that was given in, like he looked to me like being your typical 1980s, 1990s number 3.
Yeah, with the physique.
The physique, yeah.
No, he was brilliant, to be fair to him on the day, and look, was a stalwart of Wexford hurling as well. He was top class, but it was, as you said, it was old school. It was get it, drive it as far as you can, man ball and all. But he was brilliant today. But a lot of ball did suit him. It went in high or went in over the top, and he was able to use his body and shield out. Any of the attackers coming in, Fitzhenry could pick it up or whatever. He kind of set the stall for Wexford with his he's defending coming out with so much ball. He was brilliant too.
Yeah, Joe Quaid, right? So 2 brilliant point blank saves, one from Gary Laffan and the other one from Larry Murphy in the 46th minute. Really, really good saves. I think he'll be very disappointed with Tom Dempsey's goal at the same time.
Yeah, because he threw his foot at it, didn't he?
Yeah.
And obviously he cat-like reflexes, but I'd say it does haunt him, being honest. You see how cat-like he was with his save from Larry Murphy. He got his right hand to it as opposed to his
he
hurling.
saved it with his hand. Yeah,
it was unbelievable save. It was class. And his other save from Laffan, that led to the sending off then as well. I forgot that one led into the other, but that was an unbelievable save too. But you're right. Look, he was the main keeper at the time. Obviously along with Dave Fitzgerald, but he was kind of another guy that really performed in the big games, and he really believed in himself, and it was a pity, because it just seemed to sneak under him, that goal from Tom Dempsey. Dempsey just got a ground stroke, probably just hard enough to keep it away from Joe Quaid,
Yeah, barely enough, hard enough. I would say he kind of seemed to fall back, rather than if he just put his foot out to the side, he would have saved it. But anyways, I don't know anything about what he faced there, so I don't want to be too critical about it.
Yeah, but you see, that just look, and we've said this before, a ground stroke or a ball bouncing low it's one of the hardest shots for keepers to save. Do you know what I mean? High ball, and you've seen that's the 2 saves we're talking about. Were in the keeper's range. You know what I mean? Top class keepers will save them, whereas a ball low, doesn't matter how good you are, it can sneak underneath you.
Yeah, Liam Dunne destroyed Gary Kirby. I won't say in more ways than one, but Liam Dunne completely got the better of him. I think Liam Dunne got official man of the match after the game, if I'm not wrong. I'd say between Liam Dunne, Larry O'Gorman and Ger Cush for me, for man of the match. Liam Dunne got the official one. I don't know whether did Gary. You said Gary Kirby broke 2 fingers, did he?
Yeah, well, that's what the talk was.
That's what the talk was.
That's what the talk was. Look, there was a lot of blood, obviously. And he was clearly in a lot of discomfort.
Because he never laid his hand on ball from play, did he? Really, he was completely.
No, he hit no shot from play at all.
No.
I can only recall him hitting one ball from play.
It was a pass, wasn't it? It was a pass in the second half.
In the second half, yeah, exactly. So it just, but then again, look, I keep saying this, it goes back to Limerick. They never moved him out centre forward. Gary Kirby was their main man. So they could have considered, even if he was struggling with it, try and go contrast, put him in on top of Colin Keogh if they'd be able to get away with it. That kind of way, and see what they might be able to work from that perspective.
Yeah. See, the problem was it was his catching hand that had the fingers broken.
Yeah,
so
because he obviously he switched hands. When he was playing, but it was a big blow to Limerick. It really would have. Even that is talk about the psychology when you see your main player maybe getting injured early on in the game. It can have a detrimental effect to the rest of the players.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to Liam Dunne's performance, I thought he was excellent, and I think that ball he came out with near the end probably summed him up.
Yeah.
He was so. so nonchalant on the ball. You wouldn't be thinking it's the last couple of minutes in All Ireland final. He's just sauntering out with it and just keeps going with it, loses it, wins it back. And now, in fairness, Limerick actually came back up the field with it. But Liam Dunne, as I said, he always was a class act. Was he a tough hurler? Of course he was. Did he know how to pull hard? Definitely. And you didn't want to get on the wrong side of him. But he was also a brilliant hurler, and I think we saw how brilliant a hurler he was in that All Ireland. I think that does do him justice. And a fierce nice fella to boot. I won a Railway Cup with him in Rome in 2003 when he was coming towards the end of his career. Fierce nice fella.
Fierce nice fella when you're on the same Leinster team as him, I suppose.
Well, I would have played against him as well, though.
Oh, you would,
yeah. He was tough, but I would never seen an issue with him.
Well, all I know is I wouldn't be pulling in the air with him anyways. After seeing that, I might stand down for the break. Do you know what he did in that final run that you're talking about, which I thought was a great move? And I think maybe it's a bit of an old school move, but I remember seeing lads up in Portage training doing it. When you have the ball on the hurl, and just when you catch it off the hurl, that's when you sidestep. Do you know what I mean? You're kind of using the catch to change direction, if you know what I mean. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
They don't really do that. You don't see that as much now.
Challenge, it was just when the challenge came in, he just kind of shimmied a little bit to the side, and completely lost his marker.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're on about?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, brilliant use of the feet. But top class hurlers seem to be able to do that so simple. When I think of that, I've seen Owen Larkin do it a good few times. I've seen TJ Reid do it a good few times. It's just that being able to move. They're probably implying they're going one way and they'll go the other way. So simple. It's deadly.
Yeah. Gary Laffan, he got 3 from play in the end. He had about 4 wides. He had 2 dreadful wides in the second half. Wexford had a lot of bad wides in the second half, but you're right. The psychology of their wides wasn't as bad maybe as the Limerick ones. He didn't seem to be a good striker. Like I'd even be on the fence as to whether the ball he gave in for the Tom Dempsey goal, he was going for a point there, or was he going for the pass there? I'm not too sure. But when
he's definitely going for a point. I thought
going for a point,
hit it
off the left,
underneath it.
Yeah. So suppose he was on so much bloody ball. He was very young in 1996, so he got 3 from play. He set up the goal, whether he meant it or not, and he had about 4. This fella could have had 7 from play if he had his shooting boots in hurling.
And if Joe Quaid made that unbelievable stop from as well,
and him
he could have had
1.5,
1.6 easily. We'll forgive him 1 or 2 wides. That kind of way. It's very hard to shoot 100%. But yeah, he definitely had Mike Nash, or was Mike or Declan? I think it was Mike. He had him under serious amount of pressure. Gary Laffan was kind of a funny figure. He had big moments in that year for Wexford. 3 points was still a fair return, as you said, but he did the right thing as well. I think it was the follow-up from the Larry Murphy shot, was it, where he put the ball back over the bar. He didn't try to force a goal and maybe allow a big moment for Limerick to try and maybe clear it again and drive it down the field and maybe get the crowd behind him. Whereas he showed a lot of composure there and just tapped it over the bar. I thought that was actually quick thinking. He's 2 wides just after half time. He was very lucky he got that that point after, but the amount of time he had on the ball for that point he got, he was able to get the ball round his man, steady his feet, and put it over the bar on his left hand side. You don't see that too often in today's game.
No, but he made a great run for that though, because that ball was for Tom Dempsey. Someone gave that ball down in Tom Dempsey's corner, and he made his run behind Tom Dempsey and got on a lovely handy ball that Tom Dempsey didn't. It gone over Tom's head. And then when he cut back into the field, then you're right, he just seemed to have nobody marking him, and he needed that time to put it over with the way he was striking it.
Yeah, because it was close enough to the right hand post as well. I'd say he was a fair relief man to see that go. Or Billy Byrne would have been in it soon.
Oh, he would have. Jeez, Billy Byrne's a tank. I don't think he touched the ball, but I wouldn't like to be taking a hit off that fella.
As Kilkenny found out afterwards, when he scored that goal to win the Leinster final, he was a fair lump of a man. He knew his role too. He was coming in. Anytime he came on, he was in there to break up play and cause havoc. And a great character, and I love the mustachio.
No, yeah, the mustachio, yeah, like he's like the 90s porn star coming on there. And Wexford have history with porn stars, don't they, Brian? So I do. The one in the caravan now, I was only told about this. I wouldn't watch that kind of filth.
You know a lot more than I do about it.
Kieran Carey obviously was very good for Limerick as well. Colm Keogh, you've mentioned him for Wexford. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to give performance of the weekend all the way back then to Larry O'Gorman, because I thought he was outstanding. Liam Dunne was very good as well, obviously, but I'm holding that questionable strike against Liam Dunne. Larry O'Gorman, absolutely brilliant. 2 inspirational points and brilliant in general play as well from wing back. And I didn't pick him just because he sang a great song at one of the live shows, but he did sing a great song at one of the live shows, and we're going to finish up on that, and we'll be back on...
Sorry, no, before you finish, can I just say one thing?
Go on.
If you notice the cup, because this was always a massive talking point, when Martin Storey was lifting the cup, it was predominantly in green and white, all the ribbons on it. There was a huge expectation that Limerick were going to win it. There was only a small couple of ribbons in actually purple and gold. And the picture, that was around in all the pubs, the one photo of Martin Storey lifting the cup, and it's practically green and white in all his face. So that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. There seemed to be a lot of pressure, expectation that Limerick were just turning up to win that final.
Do they not take those off at the end?
They do now.
They do now. Right.
Yeah, but back then both were on it, and it was if you look back at it, it was predominantly green and white.
Right, okay, interesting enough. Right, we'll be back on Thursday. We'll pick another final. We might go with Cork in 04. I think that's on YouTube, where they stop Kilkenny doing the 3 in a row. JJ won't be happy with that choice of mine. Right, we'll leave it there.